Hey everyone, welcome to this new playlist that I'm going to start in YouTube, which is about authentication system in Golang. Now, what is this all about? So, we are going to build an end-to-end backend application in Golang, which is basically an authentication system. Now, let me first delve into the features of this project so that you get a fair understanding of what is it that we are actually going to build. So, number one, I want to make it very clear. It is that it's not an beginner project, right? So it's an intermediate project. Why? Because number one, we are going to use the MVC architecture over here. So what is this MVC architecture? Now MVC architecture is something that I'm going to explain in the next video, but basically it stems from an idea which is basically SRP, which is the single responsibility principle that we generally have in software development. Now, what is this SRP principle? So, as you can see, it's a principle that states that every module, class, or function should have one and only one responsibility to change, right? So, what it means is that typically what you will have is that you create a function wherein you just read the data from your request. So you read the data from your request, which can be the request body, for example. Then you apply some validations, and then you do some server logic or your database calls basically. Then you basically you just spit out the response, right? So you response out. Now what is happening is that in just one single function you are doing everything, right? So in just one single function you are basically reading the data from your request, you are validating if the request or if the data coming is valid or not, then you're also making database calls and you are applying your own server logic, and then you are responding out. So as you can see that in this single function you have so many different like you're doing so many tasks. Now SRP basically stands that one function, for example this is the function, it should just do one single task. So ideally what we have is that we have different layers. So what we have is we usually have this type of architecture for our project where we have the routers layer, we have the controllers layer, we have the service layer, we have the repository layers, and we have the database models. Now what are this? Again, I'm going to explain it in the upcoming lectures, but a basic overview of it is that basically routers is used to set up your endpoints. So routers, it is used to set up and register your app endpoints. So let me write it. It is used to register your app endpoints. Then number two, you have the controllers, and what controllers are primarily used, it is primarily used for accessing the request, right? So over here you play with the request and the response object. Then you have your service layer wherein you basically apply all your business logic, right? So here you basically apply your business logic. And then you have your repository layer which makes the database calls, right? So here what happens is you make the DB calls, or you basically interact with the database, right? And then you also have a validation layer. I forgot to add it over here, but like each of this layer has just one single responsibility, right? So routers it registers the app endpoints and that's it. Then controllers, it is used to play with the request object, right? So it is used for reading the body or the headers coming from the request and playing with the response, like spitting out the response. Then service layer is basically where you apply your custom business logic, and then you have your repository which interacts with the database, and then you have the data models, which is basically whatever the database models that you have inside your DB that you try to mimic, or that you basically try to implement in your programming language. So that can be in Node and that can be in Golang, right? So what is it? It is the you can say it is the object level implementation of your database tables, of your DB tables. So that is basically how it actually looks in more scalable or in more production level projects. So we are going to use this MVC architecture to build our project. And again, I'm going to dive deeper into this concept in the upcoming lectures, but I just gave a bird's eye view of what it is. Next, we are going to use the chi router. So in Golang, we have some options for routing. So we have this gin router, we have fiber router, then we have a chi router, which is this one. Basically, yeah, this is a chi router. So over here, we are going to use the chi router. Why? Number one, this is lightweight, and number two, you can see that it's a dummy code, but you can see that it is using the HTTP module of Golang. So that is why I want to use this chi router, because using it, we can work very closely with this HTTP module, and by that, we are going to grasp a better knowledge of this HTTP module, which is very important in Golang environment actually. Next, for the DB, we are going to use the MySQL DB. So I expect that you know what a database is, you know what SQL DB is, or you know what NoSQL DB is. So over here, we are going to use the MySQL database. And basically, if you know some level of backend, then you know that for your backend app to talk or to interact with the DB, or basically a SQL DB, there are two options. Number one is you can write raw SQL queries. So you can write raw SQL queries. And number two, you can use an ORM, right? And what is this ORM? So basically, what an ORM is, let's say that we have over here ORM. Now, instead of writing raw SQL queries, what you will write is you will write this DB interactions, or let me say the DB queries in your programming language. So in whatever programming language that you're using, so it can be Node, it can be a Go or anything. So basically you write all your DB level queries in your language and you give it to your ORM. And what this ORM will do, it will convert this queries which you gave in your programming language, and it will convert them to raw SQL queries. So that is what an ORM does. So you don't have to write this manual raw SQL queries by your own. Instead, you can use this ORM and you can write your queries in your programming language, and this ORM will automatically convert them to this raw SQL queries. So that will basically make your job much more easier. So this is done. Next, we are going to use access and refresh tokens. So I'm going to explain in the upcoming lecture like how the entire flow works. So you get a better understanding of the project that we are actually trying to build. Next, we are going to use email for OTPs. So after the flow that I'm planning is that after a successful register, what happens is that a user gets created in the DB, but he is not verified, right? So although the user will get created inside the database, but he won't be verified. So how will he be verified? So after registration, what will happen is an email will go. So an email will be sent to his email address with an OTP. Then the user, he has to, there will be an endpoint on our backend application. So he has to hit that endpoint and he has to provide that OTP. And then we are going to validate that OTP. And if that OTP is correct for this user, then, we will basically make him verified. If it's successful, then we will make the user verified. Right. So for this, we are going to use OTP, and like Gmail SMTP is what we are going to use for sending this OTPs. So that covers this point, and then this point also. Then we are going to have an end-to-end logout mechanism. So over here we are going to have two things for this logout thing. Number one is we are going to have a logout from particular, like from the current session, and we are going to have a logout from all sessions, right? So we are going to make this logout mechanism, which again I'm going to explain in the upcoming lectures, but here I'm just giving it a bird's eye view. All right, so this is done. Next we are going to use loggers. Now what is logging? So basically logging, so I hope that you know what console.log is, right? So console.log is a logging statement inside your JavaScript, which will basically log whatever you have over here, and it will basically log it, right? So that we can see what is there. Now similarly, logging is basically used in software development. So logging is used in software development to basically track what events are happening, right? So if I search on Google what logging is, then you can see that it is the process of emitting structured records from your running code so that events, errors, and system states survive past the process that produced them. So that is a bit confusing actually. So what logging is basically is that, let me give you a scenario, right? So you have different sorts of events that happen in your application, right? So that can be an error event, that can be an info event, that can be a warning event, that can be a fatal event. So error events, that events which basically triggered some error. Info events are basically not errors, but they're just there to give some more information. Warning are events which are not yet errors, but they can be potential errors if it does not get fixed. And fatal error is the error which basically needs the developer's attentions to get it fixed as soon as possible. So we have all these different sorts of events, and whenever we do anything, we basically log them out, so that whenever any event happens, or let's say that whenever any error happens, we can basically read these logs and be able to backtrack like why that event or basically that error has actually occurred, right? So using logging, we increase the ability to backtrack and solve errors which earlier would have been not possible to do it, right? Or would have taken much more time. That is logging in a bird's eye view. Now for this logging, we are going to use a package in Golang, which is this Zap Logger. So as you can see, this is their repo, and it is a blazing fast structured level logging in Golang. So it is a package by Uber. So we are going to use this logging, and whenever we do any database calls or anything, we are going to basically log everything out so that we clearly see that what is actually happening on our server. Next, we are going to use Goose Migrations. What is Goose? So Goose is a database migration tool. So it is basically used for managing our database schema by creating incremental SQL changes. Now what it actually means is that, let's say that you have your users table, all right? So you have a users table in your MySQL DB. So you have your users table wherein you have a name, email, and pass or password. Now you built your application on top of this users table. Now in the future, you also decided that you are going to have two more properties. Number one, the DOB or the date of birth, and number two, their address. So basically for adding these two columns, you have to write a query which is the alter query. So if you're familiar with SQL, then you have to write a query like alter table, then you name of the table, which is this, and then you have to add the column, which is your DOB, and then you have to write everything over here, right? So you basically have to execute, or you have to run this SQL query to basically alter this users table and add this DOB column, right? Now similarly, what we do is we are going to use this Goose migration. So we are going to use this Goose package, and we are going to use different migrations so that we incrementally update this database. So the first migration, we just are going to have these three things. Then in the next migration, whenever we have to add these DOB and this address, we are going to create another migration, and there we will, basically write these queries. So I hope that's pretty much clear what migrations are, what database migrations are. Next, we are going to use air for hot reloading. What is air? So it's a Golang package which is basically used for live reloading. So what it will do is that whenever there is a change in any of our file, it will automatically restart our server. So we don't have to manually do it on our own. So that is also very helpful. Next, we are going to use GitHub for everything. So what I mean over here is that we are going to create a GitHub repo. So we are going to create a repo and put all code base over there and put all code over there. Then like for each of these features, like for whenever we are implementing something new or whenever we are doing something, we are going to create branches. So we are going to create branches, and there, like in that newly created branches, we will make all the changes, and then basically we will raise the PR, and then we will merge it to main. Now, why do this? Because this is what actually is used in production level, right? So basically you don't write all your code in just one, in this one main branch. Instead, whatever feature that you are actually building, you create branch for them. Then in there, you make your changes, you raise the PR and you merge them. And over here, we can also use AI agents like a Code Rabbit, or we can use Kodo, which will basically review the PRs, and they can give us some suggestions which we can use, and we can optimize our code base. All right, so that's it for this GitHub part. And next, we are also going to implement this RBAC mechanism. So RBAC stands for role based access control, and this is something which I am going to explain in the next lecture because it's a bit complicated to understand, right? So I'm not going to cover it over here because it will be too much for you guys in just one single video, which I don't want. So that's it for this features section. Now I want to clear some expectations of your guys so that you continue the next lectures with the right mentality and with the right expectations. And that is that it's not a beginner level project, right? So it's an intermediate project which requires you to have a basic understanding of backend, a basic understanding of REST APIs, and a basic understanding of Golang. Now in backend, I don't expect you to learn everything like microservices, gRPC, REST APIs, GraphQLs, Redis caching and everything. I just want you to know like how a server works, right? So I want you to know how a server works, how database works, what are the types of database, what is an ORM, then how to, basically create a dummy app. So I need you to have this basic theory as well as this practical concepts cleared already. Then it is required for you to have basic understanding of REST API. And over here, I again mean that you should know what JSONs are. So like you should know what JSONs are, what a request is, what a response is, then what is body, what is payload, what is headers and everything. So it is required for you guys to already know these things, right? Because it's an intermediate project. And number 3, I want you to have basic understanding of Golang. So over here, I want you to have basically an understanding of basic Go, right? Of basic programming language stuff already cleared in Golang. So yeah, that's basically it for the Golang part, because I am going to explain everything, so you don't have to stress over it so much. Now, what is this roadmap for this project? So number one, we are going to set the project up first, and then we are going to set up GitHub for it. Then we are going to set up the MySQL database for it. Then we are going to create the migrations, the database models, then basically everything, right? So we are going to create the DTO. What is DTO? So DTO stands for Data Transfer Object. It's again something that I am going to explain in the upcoming lecture. So please don't stress over it. What are repository layers, what is service, everything I'm going to explain in the upcoming lectures. And also we are going to basically code it, right? Because that is what the playlist is all about. And at the last, I also want to do this thing, which is use AI to write good readmes, and also, create a post which you guys can share on X and LinkedIn. Because I don't want you guys to just build alone. I want you guys, because that is what 99% people does, right? So if you see 99% people, they just build alone. I don't want you to be a part of that 99%. I want you to build and share what you have built, right? Which is what the actual 1% people does. So I want you to write good readmes for your GitHub repos. I want you to post on social media about this project, which you are going to finish building by the end of this playlist, all using AI, right? So you can just focus on this development thing. So I believe that is it for this course announcement video. In the upcoming lectures, we are going to look each and everything of this in more in depth, and also create a GitHub repo for it. So I believe that's it for this course announcement video. In the upcoming lectures, I am going to set the project up and create a GitHub repo for it. And I am also going to, explain more about the project, right? How we are going to actually approach it, what are the intuitions behind it, what is the API schema, what is the database schema that we are actually going to build. So trust me guys, it's an intermediate project, and after building, you guys will have a lot of technical stuff cleared into your mind, and also a project that you can add it to your resume. So yeah, that's it. Stay caffeinated and keep coding hard guys. I'll see you in the next video.
Let me tell you about that VE. I'ma be your recruitment.